You're listening to Scene of the Crime, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, Missing Persons, 3 Men and a Mystery, Malice, and DNA ID. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
Predators. Their acts are evil. We call them monsters. We say no human could perpetrate the crimes they have committed. But in truth, only human beings execute these horrific acts. And if you're like me, you want to know why. To find out, join me, Ariel Cooksey, on my podcast Malice. As a social psychologist, I dig into the psychology, sociology, neurobiology, child development, trauma, and other factors that come together to create malicious offenders. Find Malice wherever you listen to podcasts.
Until February 13th, 2017, most people had never heard of Delphi, Indiana. Founded in 1828, Delphi is a small city in the northwest sector of the Midwestern U.S. state, with a population of just under 3,000 people. It is the county seat of Carroll County, which itself has only 20,000 inhabitants, of which a large percentage are of European descent, according to the 2010 U.S. Census. The tiny town is largely rural and is sparsely populated, with only 54 persons residing per square mile. Delphi is located in the Wabash River Valley and was once a commercial hub thanks to its network of shipping canals and freight train throughways. Presently, however, Delphi is largely a farming community. Home to several buildings listed in the National Register of Historic Places, Delphi houses the county courthouse, city hall, and other municipal government facilities, including the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. The city's residents consider their town a family-oriented, traditional values community, with 7 houses of worship frequented by much of its small population. The town is considered very safe, with virtually no crime. In 2015, for example, there were only 72 reported crimes, and of these, 63 were property crimes. Only a handful were violent crimes, and none were murders. Typically, residents did not lock their doors. It is in this peaceful, conservative, tight-knit community that the families of Liberty German and Abigail Williams reside. 13-year-old 8th grader Abigail Joyce Williams, known to her friends and family as Abby, was born on June 23, 2003, in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Abby's home in Indiana consisted of just Abby, her mother Anna, and Abby's cat, named Bongo, which she insisted the family take in, even though her mother was allergic. Anna Williams has several sisters who live in the area and who were also close with Abby. The teen was also tight with her grandparents, Eric and Diane Erskine, whom she called Pawpaw and Mima, and who live nearby, and her other grandfather, Cliff Williams, Anna's father, who lives in Michigan. Abby was really into arts and crafts of all sorts. You name it, she had tried it. She knitted colorful hats for newborns at the local hospital, painted keepsake pottery pieces for friends and family, created watercolor paintings to hang on her walls, made rubber band bracelets on her rainbow loom, and enjoyed beading jewelry. One artistic endeavor that Abby was particularly committed to was photography. She and her mom Anna shared this interest. Both had cameras, and Abby loved to take pictures of nature and outdoor scenes. But Abby wasn't just an artist. She was also a dedicated musician, playing the somewhat large, cumbersome alto sax in the band at Delphi Community Middle School. And she was adventurous in sports. She had played on the girls' volleyball team for 3 years and had recently been persuaded by her best friend Libby to join the softball team. One well-known story is that when Abby's grandfather Cliff heard that she was taking up softball, he was so thrilled that he drove all the way from Michigan to Delphi to go shopping with his granddaughter for the gear she needed. They picked up matching gloves and bats and plenty of softballs to practice with, and went to a local park to hit fly balls and break in the new glove. This was on the very weekend before the fateful events in Delphi. Abby was 5 foot 4 inches, with a thin 100-pound frame and reddish blonde long hair, often braided or tied up in a messy bun. She had freckles and always bore an impish smile. Her family says that the young girl was quite mature for her age and was an avid reader whose prized possession was her Kindle, which she had just received for Christmas a few weeks earlier. Here is Anna, Abby's mom, telling us about her daughter.
Oh, she was such a joyful and energetic, shy at times, a little bit harder warming up to new people, not as outgoing, but once she knew people, she was just all forward and comfortable. Loved helping, loved kids, good student, loved to read, lots of different things. Super smart, but kind and considerate would be, the best way to describe her.
Despite her youth, Abby was interested in a career in police or forensic work. She attended church camp in Michigan for a week every summer and enjoyed camping, fishing, riding horseback, and driving ATVs around with her grandfather Cliff. While at home in Delphi, Abby spent most of her time with her best friend Libby. Abby often spent the night at Libby's house and even went on vacation with Libby and her family. Unlike her friend, Abby was more reserved and took a while to get to know. But once you did, said her friends, she was always up for an adventure. Libby's grandmother, Becky Patty, described Libby's best friend Abby for us.
Abby was always quiet when she was here. Of course, Kelsi says she wasn't that quiet when we would be out, but of course, we're the adult figure, so she was always the shy, quiet one.
The Williams family is quite private and has chosen to stay largely out of the media spotlight that has been so intensely focused on them since February 13th, 2017. Abby's mom, Anna, spoke with us in connection with this podcast, but generally avoids the public eye, preferring to keep her grief private. Abby's biological father was not involved in her life. Liberty Rose Lynn German, who had turned 14 just before the new year, was Abby's classmate and best friend. Libby, as she was known, was born on December 27, 2002, to parents Derek German and Carrie Hillenberg German, now Timmons. Libby was the youngest of 3 girls. Sisters Kelsi and Glenna preceded her. Derek and Carrie were quite young when they had the girls, and the pair was unable to handle the stresses of parenting 3 small children. Both Derek and Carrie fell into a repeated cycle of drug abuse before finally getting clean. Because of this, Libby and her older sister Kelsi were raised by their paternal grandparents, Mike and Becky Patty, who have been the girls' legal guardians since they were young. Becky is Derek's biological mother, and Mike is her husband and Derek's stepfather. Derek's biological father, Brad German, and his wife also live in Delphi and were part of Libby's life. The extended German and Patty families also have many other relatives locally, some of whom we will encounter later in this story. Libby was a force of nature. She was a go-getter, a doer, a people person. Like Abby, she played the alto sax in the band at their middle school. She was into arts and crafts, including photography. Libby was newly into welding, a somewhat unusual pursuit for a teenage girl, and was planning on learning more about it in her upcoming shop class. But she was also an accomplished athlete. Becky tells us about Libby's love for sports.
In the summertime, she played softball, and about the time softball was over, she had a couple weeks, and then soccer started. There would be an overlay where she was soccer and volleyball at the same time. She would go into volleyball. Then when volleyball was over, she would go into swimming. And then when swimming was over, by that time, softball started again. There was only a couple of weeks out of the year that she wasn't in some kind of sport. She played soccer since she was 4 years old. She played softball shortly after that, except for 1 year. She tried to play baseball, decided she didn't like that, went back to softball, and had played softball ever since.
Libby's preferred softball position was first base, and at 5'4" and close to 200 pounds, she was a solid hitter on offense. It was Libby who persuaded Abby to go out for the softball team that spring. Mike and Becky, who have become fierce victims advocates in their granddaughter's case, publicizing Abby and Libby's story through regular media appearances and staying in constant contact with law enforcement, say that Libby was uplifting, outgoing, and kind. A typical teen, she would come home and dump her stuff on the floor and plunge into baking cookies or working on one of her beloved tie-dye projects, but first and foremost, she was thoughtful. Becky spoke to us, describing Libby.
She was laid back. She was a calm person. She always tried to make people feel good. She would go out of her way to make people feel good. She tried to make people laugh. She was definitely against bullying. She'd be the first to stick up for somebody. She was a happy person. Libby would go through piles of sticky notes. That's what she did. She left sticky notes all around. I was going to work one day. I went to put my sun visor down, and there was a sticky note from her that said, "We're lucky to have you." She left a sticky note for her band teacher one day and said, "You make band great." That's just what she did. She just would leave little notes and stuff to make people feel good. She was a peacemaker. Everybody's therapist. That's what she said. You know what? I should just be a therapist because everybody comes to me with their problems.
The family jokes that Libby's favorite expression was "in a minute" because she was always in the middle of something important. Libby was a smart and ambitious girl, as well as an energetic one. Her classes at school were for the high-ability kids, and she loved participating in her school's academic bowl. Libby was academically advanced enough to take classes at Purdue University up the road in Lafayette. Her area of interest was the sciences. She wanted to be a science teacher. She was extremely close with her older sister Kelsi, who says that while she herself was quiet and shy, Libby was the opposite, always putting herself out there with confidence and a zest for life. The two girls were quite different, yet they shared blonde hair, blue eyes, and a strong sisterly bond. Here is Kelsi talking to us about her relationship with Libby.
So me and Libby were really close from the time we were very small. I kind of helped raise her when my parents couldn't always do that. So that kind of started our relationship, and that's kind of where our memories start. So later on, down the road, we kind of kept growing in that bond, and she was always the more outgoing person in every friendship, but definitely in ours. So she was kind of the person that was always involved in school things. She always wanted to go out and do stuff. So she never wanted to be home. She never wanted to not have a friend at our house when she was home. She just always wanted to be with people. She loved people so much that she had to be with them all the time. We were best friends from the time we were very young. We were always together. Most of the time, if you saw one of us, the other one was close by or with them. We spent a lot of time going on adventures. We'd go to the trails. We'd hang out in our rooms just talking about stuff. We told each other everything because we were so close.
One of the activities the sisters most enjoyed doing together was photography.
Kelsi was the first one that started into photography, taking pictures and everything. And then, of course, Libby was with Kelsi all the time, and so she started. As a matter of fact, there are many pictures that I have shared that the two girls, and one of them was in the winter. They were out of school, and I don't know, it was a weekend or something, and they went outside and did a photo shoot of each other out in the snow. Another one was in the summertime, in the corn and stuff. But the two of them would just go out and just take pictures. Libby liked taking pictures of flowers, and there's a picture out there that I have posted. That's a heart in the sand with the waves coming up. Libby took that picture. She had an eye. She had an eye for photography.
Another thing the sisters liked doing together was the technological treasure hunt game known as geocaching, an outdoor scavenger hunt that took them to many out-of-the-way locations in search of the caches hidden by others. According to Kelsi, there are 2 geocaches near the Monon High Bridge where the girls sometimes went hiking, and the girls had checked these geocaches for hidden treasures together just weeks before. As we've seen, best friends Abby and Libby shared a wide range of common interests and activities. Becky tells us about their commonalities and differences.
They didn't get to become friends and stuff really until they got to 6th grade. And then the classes were all mixed. And so they were in the same grade, and at that time they both played band, they both played volleyball. So there was a lot of things that they did together, and that's how they became friends. That's a lot of the stuff they did together. I mean, when they would stay all night, because they had a lot of, it was really funny because Abby was kind of shy when she was around here. She was always shy and quiet. Boy, not Libby. She's more boisterous and loud and outgoing. So they were like opposites, but they complemented each other so much. You know, and they both liked doing painting and crafts. And if you look at Abby's house, she did a lot of the same things that Libby was always trying new things and new projects and making messes and slime and, all that stuff. She was always, hey, Grandma. She needed all this baking soda and flour. And I mean, she was just always coming up with stuff.
But Abby and Libby didn't share just hobbies and pastimes. They also shared an innate good nature and upstanding behavior. Here is Mike Patty.
Really, both the girls, they truly were good kids. Both of them. They were just good, wholesome teenage girls that, did their schoolwork, did their studies, played sports, stayed out of trouble, and were just enjoying life, like a couple kids should.
As Mike said, these were good girls. They worked hard and pursued wholesome pastimes. They weren't the kind of teens who engaged in risky behavior or illicit activities. Kelsi has said that Libby had maybe one boyfriend ever, and the two would go to the park and swing on the swings. The two girls were close with their families and largely innocent of the dangers of the outside world. That would all change in the blink of an eye. We will return to our story after a brief message from our sponsors.
It's estimated that at any given time, there are 90,000 missing persons, and that's just in the United States. Imagine if your loved one went missing. Is there anything that you wouldn't do to try and find them? Would you cross oceans, spend your life savings, continually retrace their last known steps, just hoping something jumped out at you? This is Missing Persons, a brand new podcast, and I'm your host, Mike Morford. If you're a true crime podcast fan, you might recognize me from some of my other podcasts, including Criminology, 3 Men and a Mystery, and The Murder in My Family. The most important part of hosting a podcast for me is advocating for the cases and the victims I discuss, as well as their families. I've been approached by so many people with a missing loved one asking me if I could help them in any way. And if it was my loved one that was missing, I'd want someone to help me too, so I couldn't say no. And this podcast, Missing Persons, is the result of me wanting to help. In every episode of Missing Persons, you'll hear about a person who disappeared and currently remains missing. In some cases, there are clues to follow and leads to check on. In other cases, it's as if the person just vanished off the face of the earth. And in each episode, you'll hear from someone who's searching for that missing person. And whether they've been looking for 30 days or 30 years, the pain of not knowing what happened to their loved one is real. And the search for answers, a painful one. Will you join me and become part of the search for answers in these cases? If so, search for and subscribe to Missing Persons right now, wherever you listen to podcasts, so you don't miss an episode.
And now, back to our story. Around 9 a.m. on Monday, February 13th, Libby's mom, Carrie, who was living and attending school in Kentucky, sent her daughter a Snapchat to say good morning. Libby snapped back a selfie showing herself lying in her bed. She didn't have to get up that day because even though it was a Monday, Delphi schools were closed. The previous Friday had also been a school holiday. These 2 days off were built-in snow days that the schools were required to observe, despite the fact that there was no snow on the ground at all, and, in fact, it was unseasonably warm for February in Indiana, with temperatures in the mid-40s under a warming sun. As was so often the case, Abby had spent Sunday night at the Patty home. The two teens had practiced softball in the yard, had pizza for dinner, and then spent the evening painting a large picture dedicated to the theme of chocolate as they sprawled on the floor of Libby's room.
On the 12th, Anna had taken him down to the park, and they practiced ball and stuff, and she brought him here and dropped him off. And when they come in, Abby had a whole big tote of paints and stuff. So I knew what they were going to be doing that night. They went upstairs to paint. So they were up there doing, girl stuff. Actually, I have a couple of videos that they took that night of them sitting there, and they were listening to music, and Libby taped Abby, and her head was just bobbing to the music as they were painting and stuff. As a matter of fact, one of the paintings that they didn't get finished, that they had started, it was the word chocolate. So we have a partially finished painting that says chocolate.
The girls also watched some movies with Kelsi and some friends of hers. Abby and Libby woke that Monday around 10 a.m. after staying up late the night before. Derek made them banana pancakes for breakfast. Mike was at work, and Becky, Kelsi, and Derek all had work obligations as well. Becky owns a real estate appraisal business that she runs from her home office, and Derek was scheduled to be on the road taking pictures for her that Monday. Here is Becky telling us about that day.
They had gotten up that morning, and Derek had made them pancakes, and they were piddling around, and she was bored, so they come out and asked if we could do something, and I had to work the rest of the day. So I told her, I said, well, you know what? I've got some filing that needs to be done. If you guys will do that filing for me, I'll pay you for it. And then later on, after I get done working, we'll go shopping or go do something, because Libby had started enjoying shopping. That was kind of nice because she didn't used to. You had to drag her to go get her school clothes and stuff.
Libby and Abby did some filing for Becky and also worked on repainting a desk for Libby's room. But it wasn't long before Libby wanted to get out. Her natural energy kicked in, the weather was fine, and she wanted an outing. The girls agreed to spend the afternoon at the Monon High Bridge Trail. Sometime around lunchtime, Libby asked her grandmother if the two girls could go hiking on the Monon High Bridge Trail. The Monon High Bridge Trail is part of a large network of recreational trails maintained by the city of Delphi. The historic trail network consists of over 8 miles of rural, crushed gravel trails and 2 miles of paved urban trails for hiking, biking, and enjoying nature. The trails in this system are not your typical narrow, root and rock-covered rugged paths through forest land and rough terrain. Rather, the trails are, in most places, as wide and flat as a small road. This is a well-populated trail system connecting several small parks and featuring numerous access points, parking options, information stations, historic memorials, and even bike rental outlets. Some of the trails follow Indiana's historic Wabash and Erie Canal, and some connect to downtown Delphi, where lampposts are emblazoned with banners proudly promoting the city's recreational trail system. The longest trail in the network, the 1.5-mile Monon High Bridge Trail, is one of the more remote trails on the far northeastern edge of the trail system, familiar mostly to locals, but it still could be expected to have several hikers, bikers, and runners on that chilly but sunny Monday afternoon in February 2017. The trail runs between City Park at its western end and the Monon High Bridge on its eastern end. It has two small parking areas along the part of the trail that parallels County Road 300 north. The trail's namesake, the Monon High Bridge itself, is actually an old, out-of-use railroad bridge owned by CSX Corporation. The City of Delphi Historic Trails website describes the bridge as an abandoned steel trestle over the Monon Railroad near Delphi. It was built in 1881 and rebuilt in 1891. At 63 feet off the ground, it is the second highest bridge in Indiana and the second longest at nearly 854 feet. The train tracks were removed after CSX ceased to use the bridge in 1987, but the bridge itself, a historic landmark, remains. It is important to clarify that this bridge is not technically part of the municipal trail system. A red metal barrier at the intersection of the Monon High Bridge Trail and the beginning of the bridge indicates that it is not intended to be used by hikers. And indeed, the Indiana Landmarks website says that the bridge has never been considered a safe structure for pedestrians. This is for two reasons. One, the 140-year-old bridge is in quite a state of disrepair, with gaps between the rotting trestles, cracks, holes, and missing slats in the bridge. Second, the narrow bridge has no guardrail or railing of any kind, and, as discussed, is quite treacherous underfoot. A fall from its 63-foot height would mean serious injury or death for those tumbling into Deer Creek or the wooded areas below the bridge. Despite these daunting facts, the Monon High Bridge has often been used as a backdrop for photo shoots like senior pictures and wedding photos, and is commonly crossed by adventurous hikers and brash teens. Most people would likely only cross the dangerously high structure on a dare. Kelsi German has said that she was first encouraged to cross the bridge by her intrepid younger sister Libby, and Kelsi crawled across the entire span, scared to death. And Anna, Abby's mom, has never been able to get past the third trestle. Traversing it is definitely not for the faint of heart, not only because it is terrifyingly high, but also because at the other end of the bridge, there is nowhere to go. There, the route ends, and bridge crossers are forced to retrace their steps back along the high, rickety span to return to the trail. The southeastern end of the bridge dead ends in woods, which are private property, with woodlands on both sides. From this end of the bridge, anyone continuing on would have to navigate the steep hill down from the bridge through wooded, rocky terrain in either direction, which eventually gives way to more settled areas. When the girls set out that day, they did not tell anyone that they intended to navigate the bridge. Libby's family later said that, knowing her, they would have guessed that she would head there. She had crossed the bridge many times before. Here is Kelsi telling us about her and Libby's regular excursions to the area.
Me and Libby went to the trails often. I can't really put a number on it, but we've been out to High Bridge multiple times. There's a geocache out there, or there was, that we would always go out and see if somebody had put a new one there. It was very common for our family to go out on the trails. We used to go on bike rides, so we'd been there with them, just riding our bikes there with our family, and then once we got a little older, we would go by ourselves and just enjoy the scenery and take pictures.
Becky echoed this.
They loved going out to the bridge. They would go out there to take pictures and just walk around and stuff. They had actually gone out there with their Nana, and they spent a day out there, and because there's a lot of scenery and a lot of pretty things out there for them to take pictures of. And so they just like going out there, walking around and taking pictures. They went out there and around to other on the trails and stuff to take pictures. They did it a lot.
Abby had not experienced the trails as regularly, but it's likely that she was intrigued by the bridge as well. Her mom Anna's Facebook profile picture was an artistic photo of the bridge Anna took on one of their outings. Abby had been swimming in the river beneath the bridge with her mom in the past when she was little, but Abby had never crossed the bridge. In response to their pleas to be allowed to go to the Monon High Bridge Trail, Becky, distracted with work-related obligations, told the girls that they could go to the trail if they could get a ride there and a ride back. She was too busy to drive them herself. Anna was at work at a local restaurant that afternoon, one of her 2 jobs, so she could not provide transportation either. Anna tells us that Abby had not asked her if it was okay for her to go to the trails that day.
We had been out there as a family, and I remember it being a Sunday afternoon, probably after church, years ago. I'd have to look at a date on a Facebook photo to tell you when specifically, but we had been out there. I had taken her out there when she was 6 or 7. We played in the creek, not immediately under the bridge, but there's another path that goes down to the water. We've been out there several times. Beautiful area. I actually did not know that the girls were going out on the trails that day, but as I told people, she was in Becky's care. I had let Mike and Becky take Abby to Florida with them for spring break, 2 springs prior to this. Why would I question what they were doing in the county? They could have gone out shopping. They could have gone to a movie. She was with Mike and Becky. We talked about that. Her and I did afterwards. She goes, I usually do mention it to somebody or let them know. It's like, it doesn't matter 1,000 times over. I still would have said she could have gone. I would have made, typical thing, wear a jacket, you have a hat. That'd be great too. It's cold outside, but yeah, go outside. Enjoy the fresh air.
At this point, Libby implored Kelsi to drive them to the trail. Kelsi had her driver's license, and she was planning on meeting up with her boyfriend Chase before having to go to work at 4:30 at Dairy Queen. She initially refused to drive the girls, but eventually, after they begged, she gave in, but only if they could find a ride home. Libby led her grandmother and sister to believe that she had lined up a ride home with her father Derek, saying that he had agreed to pick them up between 3 o'clock and 3:30. It appears that Libby actually did not phone Derek until the girls had already arrived at the trail, but as Libby knew he would, he agreed to meet the girls and drive them home at the end of their hike. As the girls got ready to leave, Becky suggested to Libby that she bring along a jacket.
I do know that the last things that I said to her, she was standing in the doorway of the office, and I told her that she needed to take a jacket just in case it got chilly. And she said, I don't need one. I don't need a jacket. And I said, Libby, take a jacket. She said, it's okay, Grandma. And she was standing there with that smile that she does. I didn't say anything more. I said, well, if you get cold, and that was my last, her standing there smiling at me, telling me, Grandma, it's okay.
The drive from the Patty home to the trail entrance, where Kelsi dropped the girls, takes travelers along 4 to 5 miles of flat, straight country roads through scenic farmland and fields. The trip took only about 10 minutes. While in the car, the girls turned up the radio and sang along with the music until at 1:36, Kelsi received a call on her cell phone from her boyfriend Chase. She assured him that as soon as she dropped her sister and her friend, she would be on her way to his place. She was still on the phone with him when Libby and Abby got out of the car at the small parking lot at the trailhead at the Mary I. Gerard Nature Preserve on West County Road 300 North. After she loaned the girls sweatshirts to wear, Kelsi estimates that the girls hopped out of the car at the Monon High Bridge Trail at 1:38 or 1:39 p.m. Kelsi has said that on a nice day like this sunny, warm-feeling Monday in February, this is what people in Delphi do. They go to the trails for fun, recreation, and to hang out. In fact, many people have described the High Bridge Trail as a teen hangout of sorts. Kelsi herself knew of several people who had been there earlier that very day, including her best friend and her boyfriend's younger sister, Bree. We spoke with Bree about her experience that day.
Me and a group of friends were going out to the trails to take some pictures since it was a very nice day in February. I do know we got out to the trails about late morning and we did leave early afternoon. Every time that I've been out to the bridge, I've never had a problem with anyone or no one's made me nervous. The only people that I've really seen out there when I'm there are people my age or people that I know.
Kelsi also tells us that the girls usually saw people they knew when they went to the trails.
When we were out there, we would see people that we knew. It was always people from our community that we'd met before. It wasn't very often that we'd see people that we didn't know or that we hadn't met at one point or another. Usually it's about the same people. A lot of people our age were out there, but a lot of times it would just be families out there enjoying the trail systems that we have.
On this particular day, Kelsi says,
I knew that there had been kids in and out all day. But I didn't see anyone at the entrance when I dropped them off.
Mike backs this up.
That's where all the kids were. There were kids there before them. There were kids there during. There were kids there after. I mean, that's part of the trail system that Delphi has been building as a community or as a city, as an entertainment draw basically to the town.
Kelsi confirms that the outing to the bridge was an impromptu one.
They didn't have a specific reason. They just wanted to go out and do something. So going to the trails was something that I would do often with Libby. And so she just wanted to go there and hang out.
As far as Kelsi or anyone in the girls' families knows, Abby and Libby were not planning on meeting up with anyone on their trail adventure that day. But they did meet someone. Although it appears that their afternoon hike began as planned, with the girls taking photos and walking to the Monon High Bridge, it ended in a way that no one could have foreseen, even in their worst nightmares. The quiet, rural town of Delphi would soon be rocked by the horrific ending to this idyllic excursion, and would be thrust into the unwanted glare of unrelenting national and even international public scrutiny. The innocence of Delphi was soon to be lost forever. We will continue with Scene of the Crime, Delphi, in our next episode. If you have any information about Libby and Abby, please call the tip line at 1-844-459-5786. Stay tuned following the credits on this episode for a preview of what's coming up this season on Scene of the Crime, Delphi. Scene of the Crime is narrated by me, Natalie Gray. Research and writing by Jessica Bettencourt. Technical advisor, Gray Hughes. Consulting producer, Kelsi German. Producers, Gray Hughes, Jessica Bettencourt, and Mike Morford. Executive producer, Mike Morford of AbJack Entertainment. Special thanks to the families of Liberty German and Abigail Williams, Kelsi German, Mike Patty, Becky Patty, and Anna Williams. Thanks also goes out to Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter, Robert Ives, Paul Holes, Dr. Katherine M. Brown, Colleen Fitzpatrick, Drew Collins, Michael Bennett, and Bree Wilber. If you'd like to help this podcast reach new listeners, be sure to subscribe to it and leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please recommend Scene of the Crime to your friends. You can find Scene of the Crime on Twitter with the handle @SceneOfCrimePod. Coming up in Season 1 of Scene of the Crime, Delphi.
Why Libby? Why Abby? Why Delphi?
Those girls loved each other. They were good friends. Neither one of them left each other's side. Both those girls are heroes.
Before the words came out, I knew this was not good.
As soon as I saw that, I knew something really bad happened.
The detectives were like, this is not going to take that long. It's a small town. Somebody's going to say something, and this is all going to be over soon. The first couple of weeks, that's what it felt like, is that any day now. And then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks turned into a couple of months.
My biggest fear is that whoever did this would do it again. I don't want that to happen to another family, because I'm telling you, it's hell.
There was no logical reason anybody would have known those girls would be there that day.
Child abduction murders in and of themselves are incredibly rare, but the abduction of 2 children at one time is even rarer. I've only seen a couple in my entire career.
There is a lot of crime scene evidence. Some of it is somewhat odd.
Shortly after solving the Golden State Killer case, I did speak with an investigator that was involved with the Delphi murders.
If you haven't walked across the bridge, you don't understand, right?
Yeah, like that bridge is scary.
It is scary, and those railroad ties are rotted.
That bridge scares me. So for somebody to be able to cross it, he's moving well enough that he has to know the bridge.
He's done that before.
It could have been any one of our kids. It could have been anyone at the bridge that day.
It's hard for me to believe that anybody could do something so bizarre and horrible